The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as I poured coffee into my favorite mug. My mind was already racing through the day ahead, an important presentation at my architecture firm, my son Ethan's art exhibition, and finally, the dreaded family dinner at my parents' house. I let out a deep sigh. They'll be fawning over Chloe again, I muttered under my breath. Thinking about tonight? My husband, Daniel, entered the kitchen, giving me a knowing look. He was still in his pajama pants, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. I forced a smile. I just know how it'll go. My parents will treat Lisa's daughter like she's royalty, while Ethan barely gets a nod. Daniel took a sip of his coffee, his sharp eyes filled with quiet understanding. He was a successful consultant, but his true strength was his ability to read people. You're worried about Ethan. I nodded. He's starting to notice, and it's hurting him. Before Daniel could respond, Ethan bounded down the stairs, his dark curls bouncing with each step. In one hand, he held his backpack. In the other, his latest painting, a breathtaking watercolor of a city skyline, filled with vibrant blues and purples. "Mom, I'm bringing this to the art show today," he beamed. Pride swelled in my chest. "It's incredible, Ethan. I hope Grandma and Grandpa see it too." His smile dimmed slightly. Last time, Grandma didn't look at my paintings. She was watching Chloe's ballet video. Daniel and I exchanged glances. My mother, Marion, had always been strict and opinionated. My father, Richard, rarely spoke up against her. For years, I had ignored their favoritism toward my younger sister, Lisa. But now, it wasn't just about me, it was about Ethan. "This time will be different," I reassured him. But I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. That afternoon, I nailed my presentation. My team applauded, the client was impressed, and I should have been celebrating. Instead, my mind was already at the family dinner. Ethan's art show had been a success. His teacher praised his talent, and parents stopped to admire his work. But as we drove to my parents' house, Ethan's excitement was tinged with hesitation. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will look at my painting this time?" he asked. I stroked his hair. "Of course. But remember, their opinion doesn't define your talent." He nodded, but I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The moment we arrived, it was clear nothing had changed. My parents' backyard was already filled with laughter. Lisa and Greg were seated comfortably, while my mother fawned over Chloe, tying a pink ribbon in her golden hair. My father was manning the grill, laughing with Greg as the smell of sizzling meat filled the air. "Oh, you made it," Mom said when she saw me. Her tone was indifferent, like we were acquaintances rather than family. Dad waved from the grill. "Dinner's almost ready." I set the quinoa salad I had made on the table. Mom barely glanced at it. "Salad again? You really should bring something more filling." I clenched my jaw but forced a smile. "It's healthy and delicious." Mom had already turned back to Chloe. "Sweetheart, I made your favorite cookies, chocolate chip, and peanut butter." "Yay, thanks, Grandma." Chloe clapped her hands. Ethan stood beside me, still clutching his painting. I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Mom, Ethan won an award today for his painting. He brought it to show you." Mom barely glanced at it. "Oh, that's nice." Then, without missing a beat, she turned to Lisa. "Did I tell you? Chloe's ballet instructor says she has real talent." Ethan's shoulders slumped. My blood boiled. Daniel, sensing my tension, placed a hand on my arm in a silent plea for calm. Ethan, still hopeful, turned to Chloe. "Do you want to play catch?" Chloe wrinkled her nose. "No, I'm eating cookies." Mom patted her head. "Ethan, don't force her. She's having special time with Grandma." I exhaled sharply. "Mom, he was just asking." She sniffed. "He should learn to be more social." "Chloe is the most popular girl in her class." Before I could respond, Dad called out, "Dinner's ready." We gathered around the table. I watched carefully as Dad plated the food. Lisa, Greg, and Chloe received perfectly cooked prime rib tender, juicy, seasoned to perfection. Then he placed a plate in front of Ethan. I froze. The meat was burnt, charred beyond recognition, blackened at the edges, dry and lifeless. Ethan stared at it, his little hands curling into fists. He didn't say a word, but I saw the way his lip trembled. Dad chuckled. "Boys like it tough, right?" Lisa laughed. "Ethan, you like the burnt part, don't you?" Something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly, my voice eerily calm. This is unacceptable. The table fell silent. Mom frowned. What do you mean? I gestured at Ethan's plate. Why is everyone else's meat perfect but his is burnt? Dad shrugged. It just happened that way. I picked up Ethan's plate, walked over to the trash can, and dropped the burnt meat inside. The dull thud echoed in the silent yard. Mom gasped. What a waste! I turned, my gaze unwavering. No, the real waste is treating my son like he doesn't matter. Daniel rose beside me, placing a firm hand on Ethan's shoulder. We're leaving, Dad scoffed. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. It's just a barbecue. No, I said, my voice steady. It's years of favoritism, and it ends today. Lisa sat with her mouth open. Greg avoided my gaze. Chloe continued eating her perfect steak, oblivious. Without another word, we turned and walked away. In the car, Ethan finally spoke. Mom, did I do something wrong? I turned in my seat and took his small hands in mine. No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. He hesitated. Then why were Grandma and Grandpa so mean? I met Daniel's gaze in the rearview mirror. He gave me a small nod, already knowing what I was thinking. I took a deep breath. Because they think they can be. Ethan looked confused. Are we ever going back? I glanced at our reflection in the side mirror, at the house I had spent my childhood in, a place filled with warmth that had long since turned cold. No, I said, gripping Daniel's hand. Not like this. As our car pulled away from my parents' house, a new determination settled inside me. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. The car ride home was silent except for the low hum of the engine. Ethan, curled up in the back seat, stared out the window, his small hand still gripping his empty plate. I watched him through the rearview mirror, my heart tightening at the way his shoulders slumped. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel was firm, his jaw tight. He had always been the calm one, the rational one, but even he looked furious. Are we really cutting them off? He asked after a long pause. I exhaled slowly. I don't know. The truth was, I had spent years tolerating their favoritism. It was one thing when it was just me when I was the child they overlooked, the daughter who never quite measured up to Lisa. But now, they were doing the same to Ethan, and I couldn't let it slide anymore. As we pulled into our driveway, Daniel turned off the engine and shifted in his seat to face me. Whatever we decide, we need to do it together. I nodded, appreciating his steady presence. Let's talk after Ethan goes to bed. Ethan trudged upstairs without a word. Normally, he'd ask for a bedtime story or beg for 10 more minutes to draw. Tonight, he just closed his bedroom door softly behind him. I rubbed my temples as I entered the kitchen. The events of the night replayed in my mind: the burnt meat, my mother's indifference, the way my father had dismissed Ethan like he was an afterthought. Daniel walked in, his eyes scanning my face. We can't let this go, I leaned against the counter. No, we can't. He hesitated before speaking. What if we show them exactly how it feels? I looked up. What do you mean? Daniel set his hands on the counter, his expression thoughtful. They've spent years treating Lisa and Chloe like royalty while making Ethan invisible. What if we flip the script? A slow realization crept in. You're saying we should let them experience what it's like to be excluded? He nodded. Not out of pettiness, out of fairness. If they feel what it's like, maybe they'll finally understand. I crossed my arms. And if they don't? Daniel's voice was calm but firm. Then at least we'll know where we stand. I tapped my fingers against the counter, considering it. My parents thrived on being in control. They dictated the family dynamics, decided who got attention and who didn't. Maybe it was time to shift the balance. I straightened. Let's do it. Daniel's lips curled into a small, approving smile. The plan started forming in my head, clear and methodical. Step 1, create a divide. If my parents wanted to favor Lisa's family, fine. We'd make sure they felt the sting of being left out. Step 2, show Ethan that love should be equal. He would never have to beg for attention again. Step 3, give them a choice: change or be cut out completely. I picked up my phone. First, we need to organize something without them. The next morning, I woke up with renewed determination. I sat at the dining table, laptop open, drafting invitations for a family gathering. It would be grand, something everyone would talk about. Everyone except my parents. I included extended relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had always shown Ethan love. But I left out my parents and Lisa's family. I even found the perfect venue, a beautiful lakeside cabin, spacious enough for a proper celebration. Daniel glanced at the screen. This looks like a reunion. That's exactly what it is. He smirked. They're going to lose their minds. I sent the invitations, adding a small note. Please keep this between us. It's a surprise. Responses poured in within hours. My Aunt Clara wrote back first. Finally. I never understood why your parents treated Ethan like that. Count me in. Even my father's brother, Uncle Pete, replied. About time someone stood up to them. We'll be there. By lunchtime, nearly everyone had confirmed. I checked my phone. Not a single missed call from my parents. They had no idea. Good. That evening, Ethan was drawing at the kitchen table when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I debated letting it go to voicemail but answered. Hello? Did you leave early last night just to make a scene? Her voice was clipped. I clenched my jaw. We left because you humiliated Ethan. Oh, don't be dramatic. It was just dinner. Just dinner? My voice sharpened. You ignored him all night. You gave everyone perfect meals and handed him burnt scraps like he didn't matter. A pause. Then he's a boy. Tough love is good for him. I nearly dropped the phone. Tough love? Is that what you call favoritism? Another pause. Then a sigh. Lisa's going through a lot right now. She needs extra support, and I don't? My voice cracked, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Ethan doesn't? Lisa's always been the one who needed us, Mom said, like it was a fact written in stone. I gripped the edge of the counter. Well, enjoy having her. Because we're done. Done? Yes, Mom, done. You've made it clear who matters to you, and now we're making it clear who matters to us. Silence. Then a small, uncertain laugh. You'll come around, I exhaled slowly. Not this time. And I hung up. That weekend, the family gathering was in full swing. Laughter echoed through the lakeside cabin as Ethan played with his cousins. Daniel grilled steaks, perfectly cooked steaks, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Ethan was glowing. He showed off his paintings, beamed as family members praised his talent. And for the first time, I saw true confidence in his little frame. He belonged here. As the sun set, my phone vibrated. Another call from Mom. I let it ring. Daniel raised a brow. Not answering? I shook my head. Not tonight. Because tonight, my son felt loved. And that mattered more than anything. The Monday after the family gathering, I was halfway through reviewing blueprints at my office when my phone buzzed. Mom, again. I stared at the screen, debating. The past few days had been the first in years where I hadn't felt the weight of her judgment pressing down on me. Letting it ring was tempting. But I picked up. Mom. Ava, she said, her voice sharp. Are you avoiding me? I sighed. I've been busy. Too busy to answer your mother? I closed my laptop. What do you want, Mom? She exhaled heavily, the way she always did when she wanted me to feel guilty. Lisa told me about your little family trip. I waited. You invited everyone but us? Yes. A stunned silence. Then how could you do that? I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temple. Mom, we're just following your lead. What is that supposed to mean? You've spent years treating Ethan like he doesn't exist, ignoring his accomplishments, favoring Lisa and Chloe. We simply gave you the same experience. That's ridiculous. I love Ethan. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny because he doesn't feel loved. That's absurd. Just because I don't smother him doesn't mean I don't care. My patience snapped. Mom, you didn't even look at his painting. You didn't congratulate him on his award. But you had all the time in the world to tie Chloe's ribbon and bake her cookies. So no, I don't think you care. You're being cruel, she whispered. No, Mom, you were cruel first. A long pause. We didn't realize you felt this way. I shook my head. You realized. You just didn't care. Silence stretched between us. Then she said, Your father wants to talk to you. I heard the phone shuffle before Dad's voice came through, quieter, steadier. Ava. I swallowed hard. Dad. This isn't right, he said, his tone less angry than Mom's. Family sticks together. I laughed dryly. That would have been nice years ago. Where was this energy when Mom was pushing Ethan aside? She means well. She means well for Lisa and Chloe, not for me, not for Ethan. Dad hesitated. So what now? You're cutting us off? That's up to you, I said, keeping my voice even. If you want to be in Ethan's life, things have to change. Otherwise, we're done. Silence. Then I'll think about it. The line went dead. That evening, Daniel and I sat in the living room, a movie playing in the background while Ethan worked on another painting at the dining table. I told Daniel about the call. They're never going to admit they were wrong, he said. I know. They just want things to go back to normal. I took a deep breath. I won't let that happen. Daniel nodded. Good. I watched Ethan, his tiny brows furrowed in concentration as he painted. I had fought for him, but now he needed to see that his worth wasn't something he had to beg for. And that meant I had to stop waiting for my parents to change. It was time for the final step. 2 days later, I sent the message. A family dinner, at our house, only Mom and Dad. No Lisa, no Chloe. They accepted immediately. I knew why. They thought this was me giving in, extending an olive branch. They thought I was cracking. They were wrong. Friday night arrived. I had spent the entire day preparing not just the house, but myself. I needed to be calm, in control. No more hoping, no more waiting. The table was set beautifully, candlelight flickering against the polished wood. The smell of roasted garlic and herbs filled the air. I had cooked everything myself, taking my time, perfecting every detail. Ethan sat next to me, dressed in a button-up shirt. Daniel stood by the counter, silent support in his eyes. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there, looking a little too eager. Mom wore a beige dress, her pearl necklace shining under the porch light. Dad looked uncomfortable but composed. I stepped aside. Come in. They took in the house, their eyes scanning the space they had barely visited. Mom smiled. Everything looks lovely. I nodded, leading them to the dining room. They took their seats, and I served the food. Perfectly cooked, juicy steaks for Ethan, Daniel, and me. Burnt, charred meat for them. Dad blinked at his plate. Ava, what's this? Mom frowned. Is this a joke? I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip. Not a joke. Just dinner. Mom stared at me. You expect us to eat this? I tilted my head. Why not? You expected Ethan to. Her face paled. Dad sighed heavily. Ava, this is childish. No, Dad, it's perspective. Silence fell over the table. Ethan, oblivious to the tension, happily ate his food. Mom pushed her plate away. I don't like this. You don't have to, I said. But you do have to understand it. Dad ran a hand down his face. So this is revenge? I shook my head. No, it's a choice. The same one you've been making for years. Mom opened her mouth, but for the first time, she had nothing to say. I leaned forward. This is your moment, Mom. Right now, you can keep pretending this isn't real. Or you can change. But I won't beg. And I won't let Ethan grow up thinking love is something he has to earn. Silence. Then Dad spoke. What do you want from us? I met his eyes. I want you to love Ethan the way you love Chloe. Nothing more, nothing less. Mom swallowed hard. And if we can't? I set down my glass. Then this was our last dinner. A beat of hesitation. Then, for the first time, I saw something shift in Dad's expression. Realization. Regret. Mom wiped her hands on her napkin. Her voice was small. I need time, I nodded. Take all the time you need. But I didn't promise to wait. That night, after they left, Ethan curled up on the couch next to me. Did Grandma and Grandpa like dinner? I kissed the top of his head. I don't know yet. Will they come back? I wrapped my arms around him. If they do, it'll be different. He smiled sleepily. Okay. As he drifted off, Daniel reached over, lacing his fingers through mine. Do you think they'll change? I exhaled. I think they'll try, and if they didn't, then we would be just fine without them. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their love. I was choosing my own peace. The days after that dinner were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts. My parents, who once dictated the rhythm of family gatherings, had gone completely silent. I expected it. Mom didn't handle confrontation well, and Dad, well, he had spent his entire life avoiding it. They needed time to process, to sit with the discomfort of finally being held accountable. And I needed time too. For the first time, I felt free. No more bracing myself for disappointment. No more convincing myself their approval mattered. The weight I had carried my whole life had begun to lift, and in its place, something new settled: peace. A week later, I was helping Ethan with his homework when my phone rang. Lisa. I debated ignoring it but sighed and picked up. Hello? The moment I answered, her voice came through sharp and indignant. Are you happy now? I rolled my eyes. Lisa, I'm not in the mood, she scoffed. Mom has been crying for days. Dad barely speaks. You humiliated them, Ava. I leaned against the counter, gripping the phone tighter. No, Lisa. I gave them an opportunity to change. If they're struggling with that, it's on them. You cut them out. How could you do that? I laughed bitterly. You mean the way they've been cutting me and Ethan out for years? Lisa fell silent. That's different, she muttered. I shook my head. No, it's not. The only difference is, now you feel it, she huffed. Chloe misses them, I smirked. I bet she does. They were her personal fan club. Ava, Lisa snapped, her voice a low warning. I sighed, rubbing my temple. Look, I'm not stopping them from seeing Ethan. I'm just asking them to treat him fairly. If they can't do that, then they don't deserve him. Lisa's voice softened. They don't know how, Ava. They've always been this way. I swallowed. Then they better learn. She hesitated. And if they don't? I looked over at Ethan, his small frame hunched over his math book, his little fingers tapping the pencil against the paper as he worked through a problem. Then we move on. Lisa inhaled sharply like she wanted to argue, but instead, she exhaled. Mom's birthday is next week. I know. She's expecting you to call. I smirked. She's expecting a lot. Another pause. Then, so you're really going through with this? Yes. Lisa sighed. I hope you know what you're doing. I glanced at Ethan. He looked up at me, smiling slightly when our eyes met. For the first time in years, I did. A few days later, Daniel and I sat outside on the porch, the autumn air crisp against my skin. He was reading, but I could tell he was distracted. You're thinking about them, he said without looking up. I exhaled. Maybe. He closed his book and turned to me. You don't have to feel guilty, Ava. I don't feel guilty. I paused. I feel unsettled. Daniel nodded. Because you've always been the one to fix things. And now, you're not. I leaned my head against his shoulder. What if they don't change? Then that's their choice. He kissed the top of my head. But Ethan is your choice. And you made the right one. I closed my eyes, letting his words settle in my chest. He was right. Mom's birthday came and went. I didn't call. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I owed her anything. The next weekend, Ethan had another art show. He was nervous, pacing back and forth as we arrived at the school's gallery. His paintings were displayed along the walls, each one vibrant and full of emotion. Daniel knelt beside him. You ready, buddy? Ethan bit his lip. What if no one likes my paintings? I crouched down, taking his hands. It doesn't matter if they like them. Do you like them? He nodded. Then that's enough. He smiled, his confidence growing. As the event went on, parents and teachers stopped by to admire his work, praising his use of color and detail. Ethan beamed, soaking it all in. And then I saw them, my parents, standing hesitantly near the entrance, looking unsure for the first time in their lives. I felt Daniel tense beside me. Ethan hadn't noticed them yet, too busy explaining one of his paintings to a teacher. Mom looked smaller somehow, her usual air of authority replaced with something I'd never seen before: uncertainty. Dad met my gaze and nodded, a silent greeting. I exhaled slowly, then turned back to Ethan. This moment was his. After the show, as we were gathering our things, Mom and Dad finally approached. Ethan, Mom said softly, your paintings are beautiful. Ethan turned, blinking in surprise. Grandma? Grandpa? Dad cleared his throat. We came to see your art. Ethan hesitated, then brightened. You really saw it? Mom nodded. Every piece. His little face glowed. Did you like them? They're incredible, Dad said, and for once I believed him. Ethan beamed. Thanks, Grandpa. Mom shifted uncomfortably, then looked at me. Ava, can we talk? I studied her, searching for insincerity. I saw none. I nodded. Okay. Daniel took Ethan's hand. Come on, buddy. Let's grab some ice cream. As they walked away, I crossed my arms. So, Mom clasped her hands, glancing at Dad before speaking. We were wrong. I raised a brow. You were? Dad sighed. We've been thinking about everything, and we don't want to lose you. Or Ethan, Mom swallowed. We want to do better. I studied them. And Lisa? Mom hesitated. She's struggling with this. I smirked. I bet she is. Mom exhaled. Ava, I know I can't undo everything, but I want to try. Dad nodded. Me too. I let their words settle before responding. Trying is good, but actions matter more. Mom nodded quickly. We know. I crossed my arms. Then prove it. Dad met my gaze. We will. And for the first time in my life, I believed them. Later that night, as Ethan slept soundly in his bed, I curled up next to Daniel on the couch. They want to change, I murmured. Daniel ran his fingers through my hair. Do you believe them? I thought about the way my father's voice had wavered, the way my mother had looked at Ethan's paintings like she actually saw him for the first time. Yes. Daniel kissed my forehead. Then let's see where this goes. I smiled, closing my eyes. For once, I wasn't chasing their love. They were chasing ours, and for the first time, I let them. The shift didn't happen overnight. Old habits don't just disappear, especially ones rooted in years of favoritism and neglect. I knew that. But for the first time, my parents were trying not just with words, but with actions. The real test wasn't their apology. It was what came after. A week after Ethan's art show, my parents invited us to dinner. Just us. No Lisa. No Chloe. That alone was a statement. I hesitated before accepting. Daniel and I both agreed we wouldn't shield Ethan from them, but we also wouldn't allow him to be hurt again. If they wanted back in, they'd have to prove they deserved it. So, on Sunday evening, we found ourselves in their dining room, a place that once felt suffocating but now held a fragile sense of possibility. The first thing I noticed? Mom had made Ethan's favorite meal, homemade lasagna, the way I used to love it as a kid. She even set the table with the fancy plates, something she usually reserved for special occasions. Ethan, oblivious to the deeper meaning, grinned. Wow! It smells amazing. Mom actually beamed. I made it just for you. Something in my chest tightened. I wasn't ready to trust her yet, but this was a start. Dinner was different. Not perfect, not without tension, but different. Ethan talked about school, his art, the soccer team he had just joined. For the first time, my parents actually listened. Mom asked questions, real ones, not the polite, obligatory kind, but questions that showed she cared. Dad even ruffled Ethan's hair at one point, chuckling. You're a smart kid. Got that from your mom. Ethan beamed. I watched them carefully, waiting for the moment they'd slip back into their old ways. But that moment never came. After dinner, when Ethan went to play in the living room, Mom hesitated before speaking. Ava, I want to ask you something. I set my fork down. Go ahead. She glanced at Dad before looking back at me. Do you think we still have a chance to fix this? Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. I exhaled, choosing my words carefully. That depends on you. Dad nodded. We know. I studied them. Lisa is going to fight this. She's never had to share you before. Mom sighed. She already has. I raised an eyebrow. She's angry, Mom admitted. She thinks we're betraying her, that we're choosing you over her. A bitter laugh escaped me. Welcome to my entire childhood. Mom flinched. Dad cleared his throat. She'll come around. I wasn't so sure about that. Lisa wasn't used to losing, and in her mind, that's exactly what was happening. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My parents had a choice. Keep playing favorites or step up and be real grandparents to Ethan. And for the first time, it seemed like they were choosing right. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The small changes became patterns. Mom started calling Ethan just to check in. Dad sent him little articles about art and soccer, things he thought he'd like. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from Mom, can we take Ethan to the museum this Saturday? Just us? I stared at the message, processing. Daniel peered over my shoulder. That's unexpected. I bit my lip. Yeah. What do you think? I exhaled. I think we let them. Ethan's excitement when I told him was all the confirmation I needed. They really want to take me? His eyes were wide, hopeful. They do, he grinned. Cool. I want to show Grandpa my favorite paintings. I smiled, ruffling his hair. Then you should. That Saturday, I watched from the window as my parents picked him up. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to supervise, to make sure they were treating him right. I was still cautious, still hesitant to believe this was permanent, but I wanted to give them this chance, not for their sake, for Ethan's. And when he came home later, bursting with stories about everything they had seen, about how Grandpa actually sketched with him on a bench, about how Grandma let him pick out a book from the gift shop, I knew. This was real. For the first time, they weren't just showing up for me, they were showing up for him. But Lisa wasn't done. One night, as I was finishing up some work, my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. I sighed. Here we go. Daniel looked up. You gonna answer? I smirked. Might as well. I picked up. Lisa, I just have one question, she snapped. Are you happy? I leaned back in my chair. Actually? Yeah, I am, she scoffed. So that's it? You win? I frowned. Lisa, this was never about winning. Really? Because it sure looks like you got everything you wanted. I sighed. You mean I got treated like an equal? Silence. I continued. For years, you were the favorite. You got all the attention, all the praise. Did you ever stop to think how that felt for me? She let out a harsh breath. It wasn't my fault. I never said it was. Another pause. Then, softer, I just don't know how to fit into this. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Lisa, no one's asking you to lose anything, but for once, you're not the center of the universe. And that's hard for you, isn't it? Silence. Then finally, a whisper. Yeah. I sighed, the anger draining from me. Then maybe you should talk to Mom and Dad. Tell them how you feel. I don't know how. I shook my head. Then figure it out. Like I had to. For the first time, she didn't argue. I'll think about it, she murmured. I nodded. Good. And for the first time, we hung up without resentment lingering between us. That night, as I curled into bed next to Daniel, he pulled me close. You okay? I thought about everything, the years of resentment, the broken pieces of my childhood, the fight to make things right for Ethan. And then I thought about my parents showing up, about my father sketching with Ethan, about my mother learning how to be the grandmother he deserved. I exhaled. Yeah, I murmured, resting my head against Daniel's chest. I think I finally am. Because for the first time, love in our family wasn't conditional, and that was worth everything. Months passed. Seasons shifted. And so did we. At first, I kept waiting for the backslide, that moment when my parents would slip back into their old ways, when Ethan would once again be cast into the shadows of Lisa's perfect life. But that moment never came. Slowly, cautiously, my parents carved out a new place in our lives. They started inviting Ethan over not just as an afterthought, but because they genuinely wanted to spend time with him. Dad took him fishing one weekend, teaching him how to tie knots and cast a line. Mom helped him bake cookies, letting him make a mess in her spotless kitchen, something she never would have allowed before. And the most surprising part? They stopped comparing him to Chloe. For the first time, Ethan wasn't being measured against someone else. He was just Ethan. And that was enough. Lisa, however, was struggling. She still called occasionally. And each conversation was a slow unraveling of her old world. She wasn't used to Mom and Dad having space for anyone but her. She wasn't used to being on equal footing with me. But she was learning. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. Lisa. I took a deep breath and answered. Hey, she sighed. Hey. A beat of silence passed before she said, I talked to Mom. I sat on the edge of the bed, and she actually listened. Lisa let out a dry chuckle. That's a first. I smiled slightly. What did you say? That I felt like I was losing them, I swallowed. And what did she say? Lisa hesitated. That she wasn't choosing sides. That she was just correcting a mistake. I exhaled. She's right. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I never expected. I think I resented you more than I realized. I closed my eyes. I know. Not because of you, she added quickly. Because I thought if they loved you more, they'd love me less. I let that sink in. Lisa had spent her entire life hoarding their affection. Not because she was cruel, but because she was afraid of being overlooked, afraid of being second best, afraid of feeling like I had felt my entire childhood. I softened. Lisa, there's enough room for both of us. She let out a shaky breath. I guess I'm finally realizing that. Thanksgiving was the first real test. For years, these gatherings had been predictable, Lisa's family at the center, Ethan and I on the outskirts. But this year was different. This year, Ethan sat right between Mom and Dad, showing them his latest drawing as they listened intently. This year, Lisa and I stood side by side in the kitchen, working together instead of competing. And this year, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. As we sat around the table, the golden light of the dining room casting a warm glow over everyone, I met Daniel's eyes across the table. He smiled. I smiled back. We had done it. We had rewritten the story. That night, as we drove home, Ethan was practically bouncing in his seat. That was the best Thanksgiving ever, I laughed. Yeah? Yeah, he grinned. Grandpa wants to help me build a birdhouse next weekend. And Grandma said she wants me to help decorate her Christmas tree. And Aunt Lisa actually talked to me. Daniel chuckled. Sounds like you're pretty popular now, Ethan beamed. I think they really love me, Mom. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back, reaching over to squeeze his hand. They always should have, sweetheart. And now they finally do. Daniel reached for my hand, too, lacing his fingers through mine. And as we drove through the quiet streets, the stars twinkling above us, I knew this was what family was supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not without flaws, but whole. And finally at peace. Story 2. The skyscrapers of Chicago were lighted by the early sun. Olivia Hunter was at her desk already. She had been a senior designer at Creative Impulse, an advertising firm, for 7 years. The picture frame on her desk was well lit by the light coming in through the window. It simply had her graduation picture on it. Olivia was wearing a basic yet elegant gray pantsuit and navy shirt, and her hair was carefully pulled back in a ponytail. Everyone recognized the caliber of her work, but her coworkers frequently referred to her as a perfectionist and occasionally avoided her company. She inhaled deeply, sipped her coffee, and looked at her emails. In the corner of the screen was a note from her mom. Olivia hesitated for a second before opening it. Olivia, regarding the birthday celebration for your father, I have not heard back from you. Next Sunday is the date. Vanessa has even taken time off from her job. Olivia looked at the television and sighed. For 25 years, her mother, Martha, had been an English teacher at Oak Park High School in the Chicago suburbs. Her pupils loved her, and her coworkers respected her. She always gave off the impression of being the ideal mother at home, especially when it came to her younger daughter, Vanessa. Olivia murmured, I'll respond later, and marked the email as read. She had no desire to attend her father's birthday celebration. George, her father, had spent more than 2 decades as a sales manager at Hunter Realty, the neighborhood real estate firm. He was friendly, gregarious, and well-liked by his clients. At home, though, he rarely stepped in to resolve disputes between the girls and always respected her mother's viewpoints. Olivia frequently characterized her father-daughter relationship as one of superficial respect. Although he was pleased with her academic performance and career accomplishments, he never made a sincere effort to comprehend her. Rather, George's focus was constantly on her sister, Vanessa. Olivia had a range of complicated feelings at the mere mention of that name. Vanessa was employed at the local First National Bank's personal banking section, and there had been recent reports that she was being promoted to assistant branch manager, with blue eyes and beautiful blonde hair. Vanessa continued to have an active social life, attending parties with friends on the weekends, while serving as the school's cheering captain. The favorite of Mother, Olivia muttered softly. It was a conclusion based on years of observing at family get-togethers, not just envy. While expressing a formal interest in Olivia's accomplishments, her mother would get thrilled while discussing Vanessa. Her desk phone began to vibrate. Grandfather Olivia's countenance softened on the screen. Her maternal grandpa, William, a rich and retired judge, had called. Olivia might be able to open up to him more than any other family member. Olivia's voice was upbeat when she answered the phone. Good morning, Olivia. Good morning. How are you? William's kind voice echoed. I'm all right. Simply busy. How are you? Still refusing to let the kids hit me? In response, William laughed at George's birthday celebration. I take it you're on your way? Olivia paused for a second. I'm still undecided. I'm busy at work. On the other end, her grandfather let out a long sigh. Olivia, I get it. I understand that family get-togethers might be challenging for you, but would you still come for me? I'm becoming older. Few opportunities exist for the entire family to get together. Olivia placed her palm to her forehead and closed her eyes. She was unable to ignore what her granddad had to say. Okay, grandfather, I'll be there. Hearing that makes me feel better. I also read last month's article regarding your initiative. It was quite good. You have a real skill. His remarks caused Olivia's eyes to brim up with tears. Olivia hung up and stared thoughtfully out the window. She had felt different from her family since she was a little child. I mean it. Not sincere. She was frequently characterized by her relatives as uninteresting and rigid. With every year that went by, her ties with her family, particularly those outside of her grandfather, began to deteriorate. Even for Thanksgiving and Christmas in recent years, she had received fewer invitations to family get-togethers. People kept telling her that Olivia must be busy. It was somewhat accurate, but occasionally she purposefully made meetings in anticipation of being turned down. Olivia faced her computer screen and swiveled her chair back. She looked at next Sunday on her calendar. It was empty. She entered and saved Dad's birthday party slowly. As she went back to work, she mumbled, I wonder what excuses I'll hear this time. She secretly longed for familial ties, but was always afraid of being rejected. Her only desire was to be genuinely welcomed into the family. The day before her father's birthday celebration, Olivia was standing on her mother's porch on a Saturday afternoon. Since her personal printer had malfunctioned and the deadline was drawing near, she had come to print reference papers for a new design project. Olivia, you arrived. Martha formally hugged her as she opened the door. The time was ideal. I just purchased the cake, and Vanessa just went out to get party decorations. Thank you, Olivia said softly. Can I make use of the printer? Indeed, without a doubt. Make use of it for the research. Have you arranged your father's gift yet, by the way? Olivia smiled a little. Indeed. He's been looking for a classic watch, and I found one. Martha answered. Oh, that's nice, but her tone was unenthusiastic. Vanessa got a set of golf balls. Your dad will be overjoyed. After giving a faint nod, Olivia went to the study upstairs. Despite her best efforts to remain emotionless, she felt her mother's words slice her heart. Turning on the computer and going into the study, a screen with the password appears. Olivia let out a sigh. Could you please tell me the password, Mom? She made a downstairs call. Oh, I forgot. Last week, I made the modification. Martha came up the steps. My phone will be faster. You received your documents by email, correct? Martha gave Olivia her iPhone after unlocking it. Right here. Make use of this. I have to call for one last confirmation on the cake. I will return in around half an hour. All right, regards. Olivia sighed with relief as Martha exited the room. She started looking for the file she had emailed herself on the email program on her mother's phone. She forwarded the file to the printer after downloading it. Olivia was left stranded when the printer began to function. She instinctively went back to her mother's phone's home screen and started browsing the apps. There was a folder named Private Albums that drew her eye. Personal records, Olivia muttered. Curiosity compelled her to tap on the folder. Numerous photo albums with titles like Valencia's birthday, Florida trip, 2023 Christmas dinner, and family weekend were shown on the screen. Olivia scowled. She was unaware of these happenings. Odd. She pressed the Vanessa's birthday album. One picture after another emerged. With their parents, friends, and family around her, her sister Vanessa is seated and grinning in front of a birthday cake. Olivia gave a start. 3 months have passed since this. No one had invited her. What is this? Her hands trembled. She went on to launch Florida Trip 2023. There were pictures of Vanessa and her dad having a good time on a Miami beach. Verifying the date, Olivia had been informed that she couldn't take a family vacation that week due to a crucial presentation. They misled me. Olivia's tone faltered. Next is Christmas supper. Last Christmas, Olivia spent the day by herself at her apartment after being informed that there were no special family arrangements. The family was seated around an opulent dining table in the pictures. Grandfather William was present as well. Olivia's heart started pounding. She saw more family pictures without her in them as she opened Family Weekend. She looked through each album in the folder individually, and she wasn't in any of the pictures. Why? Her eyes filled with tears. The printer had stopped, but she didn't even notice. Just then, she heard the basement door open. "Have you completed printing the materials, Olivia?" the voice of Martha yelled. Olivia brushed away her tears and promptly returned the phone to its initial condition. She was unable to eliminate the agony and emptiness that were growing inside her chest, though. "Indeed, I did." Her voice trembled as she responded. Olivia was standing and had already placed her stuff in her bag when Martha came back to the study. "You're already on your way?" Martha inquired, a little taken aback. "Indeed. I still have tasks to complete." Olivia was unable to look her mother in the eyes. "You're attending the party tomorrow, is I correct?" Olivia remained silent as she nodded. She rushed to the front door after descending the stairs. "Are you all right, Olivia? Has something taken place?" She was followed by Martha. "Nothing. I'll see you tomorrow." Olivia gave a quick response before getting into her car and going outside. She sobbed softly while pressing her forehead against the steering wheel. The uneasiness she had experienced for years now manifested itself in a concrete way. She had been purposefully kept out of her family. Olivia spent the entire night at her apartment, unable to fall asleep. She retrieved memories from the past, remembering the words and deeds of her family. Olivia has a lot going on. Olivia would have no interest in it. Don't tell Olivia. She will suffer harm. Now, there was a new meaning to these words. Olivia had decided by the time the morning sun came through her window. Reaching for her cell phone, she sent the same message to every member of her family. "Please stop contacting me." She then blocked each of them. Contact via phone, social media, etc. It was an odd sensation, a mix of sadness and freedom. Chicago. Spring was changing gradually, just like Olivia's state of mind. 3 months after cutting ties with her family, she had maintained her isolation and immersed herself in work. Her reputation at Creative Impulse had risen even more than before. Having won an award last month for a campaign for a major beverage company, sipping her coffee while looking at the cityscape visible from her office window, Olivia felt the void in her heart still aching, but her daily life moved forward. "Want to come to a new yoga class with me?" Her colleague Rachel stopped by her desk. "I heard the instructor is really good this weekend." Olivia smiled. Rachel was a colleague she had become particularly close to since cutting ties with her family. "Sounds good. I'd like to try it." Her cell phone vibrated. It was a call from an unknown number. Normally she would ignore it, but for some reason she felt compelled to answer. "Hello, Olivia. It's me." Olivia's heart jumped at her grandfather. William's voice, "Grandfather?" the first apologize. "I'm calling from a new number. I heard you blocked everyone in the family." William's voice was calm but contained a hint of sadness. Olivia stood up and headed to the conference room. "I didn't mean to block you two, but no need to explain." "I understand," William said. "But there's something I need to talk to you about. Could you come to my house this evening?" Olivia hesitated. "What is it about? I want to talk in person. This isn't a conversation for the phone." Her grandfather's voice had an unusual urgency. "All right," she finally agreed. "I'll come at 6. After hanging up, Olivia stood by the window, looking down at the city of Chicago. The prospect of reuniting with her grandfather brought both expectation and anxiety to her heart. William Morrison's mansion was located in an upscale residential area in northern Chicago. Passing through the stone gates, a well-maintained garden spread out. When Olivia rang the doorbell, the butler Harold greeted her. Olivia was led through the spacious hallway to her grandfather's study. William was sitting in a leather chair in front of the fireplace. His appearance was still dignified, but he seemed a bit thinner than before. "Olivia, I'm glad you came." William stood up and embraced his granddaughter. "Grandfather?" Olivia relaxed a little in his arms. "I'm glad to see you. Okay, sit down." William pointed to another chair in front of the fireplace. "First, I want to say that I don't blame you for your decision." Olivia nodded silently. "I know about the photos," William said quietly. Martha told me that you found them. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. Why, grandfather? Why am I the only one who was excluded? William finished her sentence. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Grandfather stood up and took an old leather-bound album from the bookshelf. This is the family history I've recorded over the years. Olivia took the album from her grandfather and opened it. It contained family photos she had never seen before. Pictures of her mother, Martha, when she was young. Christmas scenes with her grandparents, and then, Olivia gave a start. Indeed, your mother and her sister, your Aunt Elizabeth. Olivia was perplexed. Aunt, does mother have a sister? Had William said solemnly. Elizabeth died 30 years ago in an automobile accident. Olivia continued, turning the pages. Aunt Elizabeth looked extremely similar to her mother, Martha, but her eyes were kinder and more open. But how does this connect to our family's problems? William let out a loud sigh. Martha and Elizabeth were constantly competitive. Elizabeth was intelligent, social, and adored by everyone. Martha, on the other hand, he sought for words, was more shy and envious. After Elizabeth's death, Martha transformed the darker sides of her nature, grew stronger, yet. Why am I? You resemble Elizabeth. Olivia, William said gently, not just in look, but in character too. Your honesty, your kindness for your mother, perhaps it brings up sad memories. Olivia was speechless. She gazed at the pictures of her aunt. But that's no justification. Suddenly, William's voice became louder. What? Martha, it is unacceptable what Vanessa and George did to you. Olivia stated softly that they had misled me, claiming that there were no family get-togethers when, in reality, there were. They also told me lies. Unable to control his rage, William said. Olivia is too occupied to attend. Olivia expressed her lack of curiosity. I took them at face value. I made a mistake. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. You were unaware? Had I known, I wouldn't have permitted it, William stated with determination. Last month, Vanessa came to me in tears and told me the truth, most likely out of guilt. Surprised, Olivia glanced up. Vanessa? Indeed. She must have been stunned by your alienation. She has always followed her mother's instructions. But she must have been tormented by her conscience this time. William got to his feet and went to his desk. I have a choice, Olivia. I'm hosting a special dinner at this house next Saturday. Everyone in the family is invited. What? However, I do want you to attend. William gave Olivia a serious look. I have a message for everyone, and this is also for your vindication. The entire family. Olivia's gaze was bewildered as she glanced at her granddad. What are you going to do, grandfather? That is the day's surprise. William grinned a little. Olivia, you have my admiration of your genuineness and strength. The moment has come to show the whole family that. Olivia inhaled deeply as she tried to gather her thoughts. She didn't feel prepared to see her relatives once more, but when she saw her grandfather's resolute stare, she gave a feeble nod. Okay, I'll come, Granddad, William said with delight. Good decision. The dress code is formal, but I will give out formal invites. I want to turn the family reunion into a reason to celebrate. Olivia questioned her grandfather as she turned at the door on her way out. Are you certain about this, grandfather? It looks like you're planning something. William grinned. Do not be concerned, simply said. The moment has arrived for the truth to be exposed. Olivia showed up at her grandfather's estate on Saturday night, wearing a black cocktail dress. She walked to the main door inside, feeling a knot in her gut from anxiety. Her relatives had already assembled. Mother Martha, Sister Vanessa, and Father George. They had different expressions. Martha was obviously nervous. George was perplexed, and Vanessa's eyes were filled with remorse as she gazed at Olivia. Olivia George came over. A long time has passed. Indeed, it has. Olivia gave a succinct response. There was an uneasy quiet. Just then, William came into the room. He looked extremely respectable, dressed in a black tuxedo. Please take a seat, everyone, William declared. It's a special meal tonight. Around the dinner table, everyone was seated. Before toasting, William took up his glass. I want to share something with everyone. He rose to his feet and spoke solemnly. I have treasured this family's honor for many years. honesty and dignity have been important to me. He gave Olivia a glance. And I want to reiterate those principles tonight. William surveyed the table. Martha, George, Vanessa. He spoke in a chilly tone. I am aware of what you did to Olivia, removing her from the lineage, causing her pain. The hue of Martha's face altered. That's Dad. Keep silent. William spoke in a firm tone. Excuses are not what I want to hear. I didn't teach you these ideals. He approached Olivia. The most valuable, honest, and industrious member of this family is Olivia Hunter. Her own efforts are the sole cause of her success. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. William touched her shoulder with his hand. And I have made up my mind tonight. With his back to the table, he spoke. Olivia is my designated heir to my business and fortune. Shock rippled through the room. Martha gave a start. George got up from his seat halfway. Vanessa's face became white. Dad, what are you saying? Martha's voice was shaking as she asked. It's obvious, William responded coolly. Olivia will inherit the Morrison family's wealth and management rights to the real estate company upon my passing. The legal processes are finished, and this is my final decision. Olivia was taken aback. She was struck by her grandfather's resolute face as she looked up at him. This isn't a punishment, grandfather. William spoke in front of the whole family. This is a choice to assign the appropriate responsibility to the appropriate individual. In honor of my granddaughter Olivia Hunter and the Morrison family's future, William raised his glass. In the grand conference room of Morrison Real Estate, Olivia lifted her own glass with shaking hands. A week following her grandfather's supper, Olivia was going over recently delivered paperwork. Holding a business card bearing the company's emblem, she had been formally named as a director. It didn't feel real yet. Her grandfather, William, came in and adjusted himself once the door was knocked. He smiled as he asked. Olivia honestly said, I have a lot to learn about the real estate industry. Little by little. I have faith in your keen intellect and capacity for learning. William took the seat across from her. Additionally, you have demonstrated management acumen in the advertising sector. You'll give this business a fresh viewpoint. Olivia looked out the window and nodded. The downtown skyscrapers were visible. What about father and my sister? William's expression obscured on the surface. Your appointment is accepted. Vanessa began working as a financial assistant last week, while George is still employed in the sales department. Is it truly all right? Olivia's worry was obvious. Grandfather remarked softly, I think they need time to come to terms with the truth. In order for you to comprehend the realities of the business, I am now providing you with access to all accounting records and transaction histories as of right now. Understanding its history is crucial. Olivia started splitting her time between running Moss & Company and working at the advertising firm after that day. Her analytical abilities and attention to detail soon started to pay off. 3 weeks later, at night, she examined the last 5 years' worth of accounting data and looked into transaction trends. Olivia stayed in the business office and focused on her reading materials. She examined the same figures over and over again, frowning. Oh, she whispered, strange. The accounting system of the business was shown on the monitor. She looked at client transaction histories, bank account statements, deposit and withdrawal records, and more thorough cross-referencing. At last, she found a pattern of anomalies. Here it is. With shaking hands, Olivia made notes and printed the information. Money has been routinely taken out of the business over the last 3 years and moved to several accounts that were hard to track down. These accounts were linked to personal investments made by her father, George, and sister, Vanessa, according to additional research. Incredibly so. After gathering the supplies, Olivia packed them into her backpack. She had to go straight to her granddad. Olivia described her discovery in William's home study the next morning. Have you have evidence? William posed the question sternly. Indeed. Here is all the proof. Olivia laid out the documents. Over the last 3 years, my father and sister have embezzled around $2 million from the business by overcharging customers, making up expenditures, and fabricating transaction records. I have proof of everything. William was quiet for a while. His eyes flashed with disappointment and anger. At last he answered, I was blind. My own grandchild and daughter. What treachery. What are you going to do? Silently. Olivia inquired. William got to his feet and went to the window. I thought about going to court, but that would reveal the family's embarrassment. Instead, he turned around. This time, I'll have another family gathering. I'll give all the family a call. Every one of them? Surprised, Olivia inquired. Indeed. All of the Hunter and Morrison relatives, including cousins. Around 30 individuals. William's voice was full of resolve for the family's dignity and future. Every truth ought to be made public. A week later, for the first time in a long time, William's home was crowded with family. Olivia occupied the seat beside her granddad. Despite her nervousness, she maintained a straight back while glancing at her sister and father, who were seated across the room. They were obviously nervous. William got up and clinked his glass after supper. I've brought you all together today at this significant turning point for the Morrison family. Dear family members, he stated gravely, the time I have left in my life is coming to an end. I want to make sure this family has a bright future. He gave Olivia a beckon. She got up and moved to stand next to her granddad. I publicly declare Olivia Hunter Morrison Real Estate's future president, William said. But there was a stir in the room. Before that, I want everyone to be aware of something. William scanned the room slowly. According to recent investigations, firm cash were embezzled. Suddenly, there was silence in the room. George? Vanessa? Get up. William spoke in a firm tone. Olivia's sister and father got to their feet, shaky. You have violated the Morrison family's confidence. William displayed a document. This is the proof. Proof that you fabricated documents and used business cash for personal use. Hold on, there's a miscommunication. George's voice rose in desperation. The evidence is clear, William stated calmly, but you'll have an opportunity to explain. Martha's face became white as she gazed at her husband and daughter. Is this accurate? Her voice faltered. Vanessa was speechless due to tears in her eyes. George became quiet as well. This is my verdict, William said. The Mawson Company exiles George and Vanessa. As of this now, Olivia will assume complete control of the business. There was a buzz in the room. Family members exchanged shocked and surprised looks with one another. Olivia stood silently, relishing the absurdity of her circumstances. She would now exclude the family who had excluded her. She had a silent belief that justice was being done, but no joy in her heart. As the first anniversary party was being planned, the Chicago summer light sparkled off the glass windows of Morrison Real Estate's new office building. Olivia stood at the window, taking in the scenery of the city during the last 12 months. Unthinkable changes had occurred in her life. President and her secretary, everything is prepared. Jennifer walked into the room grinning. Olivia smiled back at him, appreciatively. Thank you. Is grandfather here yet? Indeed, he's in the lobby, waiting. Nearly everyone else has assembled to do the same. Olivia relaxed her shoulders and inhaled deeply. Then let's go. As she went into the elevator, she thought back to the previous year, when she bravely gave up her creative inclination and focused all of her efforts on first repairing Moss & Company after her father and sister's deception was revealed. Although it took her some time to win back the industry's trust, her honesty and creative thinking eventually brought her praise. The Moss & Company was once again a reputable business in the real estate sector. Having grown by 20% from the year before, William was clutching a cane, yet he was standing straight as he arrived at the foyer. Martha Olivia, Olivia's mother, was beside him. Her mother, who appeared rather agitated, yelled out, "Thank you for coming, Mom," Olivia said softly. It took a while and was difficult to mend the friendship with Martha. Martha had often apologized and tried to get in touch with her daughter after she and George decided to part ways. After keeping her distance at first, Olivia gradually started to show more affection. William embraced his granddaughter's shoulders and remarked, "You've raised a wonderful company. I'm pleased." "Grandfather, you are the reason for everything," Olivia grinned at the location. Employees and clients had gathered to honor Olivia's accomplishments. The walls featured designs and models of upcoming projects, signifying the promising future of Morrison Company. William stepped onto the platform for the celebratory speech. "I want to thank everyone for coming together today, ladies and gentlemen. I am now certain that the big choice I made a year ago about this company's future was the right one. As Olivia entered the platform, he held out his hand to her. Later in the celebration, Olivia was taking a break in a quiet place when there was a burst of applause. Her mom came over. Vanessa contacted me. Martha said a faint word. She has yet to move over the broken engagement. Olivia gave a quiet nod. As soon as the deception was revealed, the family of her sister's fiancé had called off the engagement. You told her what? The reality, Martha replied. That decisions have repercussions. There was a silent agreement between them. How about Dad? Olivia inquired. I've heard that he acquired a job in another state at a tiny real estate firm. Martha gave a shrug. We're not going to reconcile. Olivia may have looked out the window. The sky was starting to darken as the sun sank. Her heart was slowly becoming less filled with hate and wrath and more filled with a silent acceptance and a resolve to go on. A fresh start, she murmured. Indeed, Martha concurred. For us all. Olivia smiled slightly at her mother. Although the future was yet unknown, she had faith in the course she was on. She would never be shaken by any secret again.